Hi everyone, I'm Mr. LeCornu.
I'm Mr. Ward.
Welcome to the Science Lab, and today we're talking to you about probably our most important topic, laboratory safety.
So we're going to go through a few things that you need to know when you're in the lab and when you're doing experiments in labs.
Science is awesome. We use this cool space and we can do some great stuff, but we just need to know the best way to do it to keep ourselves safe at all times. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the protective equipment. What protective equipment do we need to know about, Mr. Ward?
First thing is safety glasses. So we've got safety glasses. These are my small thin ones. They fit right across my eyes and they protect my eyes.
So the thing about safety glasses is you'll find them up at the back of the room. They're normally in a container that looks like this. Now the ones that Mr. Ward are wearing are actually regular safety glasses, but if you wear glasses like me, you don't want to sacrifice your vision for safety. So we've got another type, which are these here that fit over the top of my regular glasses, and now I'm safe.
All right, next thing we're going to talk about is lab coats. So let's put on our lab coats, Mr. LeCornu.
Sure thing.
So important with lab coats is that you do them up. They don't really help you if they're undone. They're not going to protect the middle of your body. Now, some classes will have lab coats, some will have safety aprons. So let's go have a look at the apron as we're over here.
This lab obviously doesn't have lab coats, Mr. Ward. It has the safety aprons. Tell us a bit about these.
So these are made of vinyl. They'll protect your core just as well as a lab coat will. Put them on over the top and you tie them up at the back.
Okay.
Important thing is, when you're finished, make sure you hang them up nicely and neatly, please.
Cool, thanks, Mr. Ward. Right, so we've got our safety glasses on, and we've got our lab coat or our apron.
The next thing we're going to talk about is shoes. All right, so your shoes need to enclose your entire foot. The idea is that if you spill anything like chemicals or hot liquids on your feet, they will be protected.
So no exposed parts of your feet means that your feet are going to be safe at all times.
So no thongs, no sandals.
Right, got it. What's next?
Last one is you need to have your hair tied back if your hair is longer than shoulder length. Neither me nor Mr. LeCornu have shoulder length hair, but if you did, you would have to tie it up. And why is that, Mr. LeCornu?
Because let's say we were over here using our Bunsen burner heating equipment, and we're really into the experiment. We're checking out what's going on, and as I lean forward, my long hair could potentially come in contact with the flame. We don't want that happening because that might lead to...
Bad 80s hair.
Right, bad 80s hair.
All right, so while we're talking about the Bunsen burner, let's talk about fire safety.
Fire. Okay, so we've just checked out the Bunsen burner. That's something we use all the time in science because we want to be heating things. When we're using fire, we need to think about this. Always wear safety glasses when heating.
Check.
Check. Okay. Always point test tubes away from you and your group members.
Before we get to that, let's look at how to light a Bunsen burner safely too.
Of course, right.
So we've got heat-proof mat underneath the Bunsen burner. I've got my lighter. What do I do first, Mr. LeCornu?
The first thing you're actually going to do is light the lighter.
Even before that, make sure the holes are closed.
Of course. And so the air hole's closed, that means our Bunsen burner will be on the safety flame. But the reason we're going to light the lighter before we open the gas tap is because if I turn on the gas tap first, gas is filling up the room. Then if Mr. Ward lights the lighter, what are we going to end up with?
Bad 80s haircut and no eyebrows.
Right, the double whammy.
The double whammy.
Okay, so let's light the Bunsen burner.
There we go. All right, let's go back to our rule.
Okay, so always point test tubes away from you and your group members.
So when we're heating, we go to the heating flame by turning the collar and opening up the hole. Got my test tube ready to heat it, and I'm going to heat it and I'm going to point it in this direction over here. It's not pointing at me, it's not pointing at Mr. LeCornu. Why do I do that?
Well, when you're heating liquids, they have a tendency to boil. And when they boil, they have a tendency to leave their container. So of course, we don't want to point it at ourselves because we could end up wearing those chemicals, and of course, they're going to be hot.
And that could be quite bad. All right, what's our next rule?
We've got to keep our books, hair and clothing away from the flames.
All right, so normally in a science lab you might have your book, you might be leaning over. You don't want anything that's flammable anywhere near the flame. So if you have books here, they might catch on fire. We talked about the bad 80s here, if you catch it on fire. The other thing is big billowing clothing. If you're doing this near your flame, you could catch it on fire.
All right, standing and not sitting. What's that all about?
So if I'm sitting here and I'm working with hot chemicals and I spill something on me, those hot chemicals are going to sit exactly where I don't want the hot chemicals to be.
Gotcha. Right, yes, okay, no, definitely can see the case for standing, not sitting.
Whereas if I'm standing and I spill hot chemicals on me, then they'll go straight on the ground. They won't hang around that area.
Right, and you also, when you're standing, you're so mobile. So if you've made a spill, you can quickly step back and get out of the way. If you're sitting, you're not going anywhere. So, like over here, the stool tucks nicely under your bench, but over there, I think there's a bit more of an issue.
So over here, you normally have your stools like this, and that will encourage you to sit down. So what we do is we move our stools away from where we are working so that we're not tempted to sit down.
Okay, cool. All right, then it says here, if there is a fire, call for help. Call who?
You call your teacher. The general rule is if you don't know what you're doing, call your teacher.
Of course.
So if we've got a fire here, you want your teacher dealing with it. You don't want to try and sort out the problem yourself. So what's the first thing your teacher's going to do?
Your teacher's going to come over here to the gas shutdown and press this button, which will shut down all the gas in the room. That might not solve the problem though, because there might be another fire elsewhere.
If you've got a really big fire, then your job is to just exit. Every lab should have 2 exits. So we've got 3 in this lab, so you exit and you get out. And then it's your teacher's job to try and deal with the fire if they choose to.
Okay, the other thing your teacher might do is come over and find the fire extinguisher. This is for your teacher to use. You don't need to worry about it, but there is a fire extinguisher located in the room.
The same goes for a fire blanket. Your teacher should be using the fire blanket, not you.
Now, what about in the extreme case that perhaps you or one of your group members has been unlucky enough to have set themselves on fire?
Then you follow the old adage, stop, drop and roll. So
Stop
what you're doing, drop to the floor, roll around. And that will smother the flames and hopefully put them out pretty quickly.
Oh, okay, good. Crisis averted. All right, so that's our fire. Oh, apart from 2 other things, hot equipment needing to cool.
So we had the Bunsen burner going for a few minutes, so the top of this is going to be quite hot. It doesn't look hot though. Metal and glass don't look hot when they're hot. So if you touch that, you could get a severe burn. And that goes for any of the other equipment. So my test tube here will be quite hot down the bottom still. So you need to be careful.
Okay, absolutely. And if you burn yourself, in the unfortunate case that you burn yourself, hand under a tap.
So if you burnt your hand, you just put your hand on your tap and you leave it there for a very long time. That'll take the heat away and will cause less damage.
After you've got your hand going under the tap, what's the other thing that you would do, Mr. Ward?
Tell the teacher.
Tell the teacher. Okay, so fire safety, I think we've well and truly covered. It's something that we use all the time, and it's important that we know how to do it properly. Something else that we use all the time in science is chemicals. And we need to know how to handle chemicals safely. Have we got some chemicals somewhere?
We've got chemicals around the room.
Yes.
We're going to focus over here with our copper sulfate. Copper sulfate's a pretty blue liquid, and our first rule, if we look at it, what's our first rule?
Our first rule in chemical safety is don't eat or drink in the lab. Why is that?
This is quite a pretty liquid. It might look like cordial or something, so you might want to drink it. You don't drink any chemicals in the lab or any water in the lab. It has several instructions on here that tell us things like the safety of the liquid if you were to drink it, and we'll talk about that shortly again.
Yeah, okay, so check the labels before you use any chemicals.
Well, even before we get there, we didn't talk about eating. We forgot to talk about eating.
Oh, yeah.
If I spilt this on the table and I had a sandwich here, sandwiches are really good at absorbing liquid, so I could put my sandwich in there and have a bit of a mung, and then I could get quite sick.
And even if I kept my sandwich over here where I thought it was safe, if I've been working over here with you, Mr. Ward, and got copper sulfate on my hands,
that would go with you to your sandwich and then into your mouth and then into your digestive system, which wouldn't be very good.
So there really just isn't a safe place in the lab to eat or drink?
We don't eat in labs, we don't drink in labs.
Okay, checking labels before you use any chemicals.
So here's my copper sulfate. It has a label. It's got some pictures on there that tell us particular things. You need to be careful with it and it's bad for the environment. There's also written instructions about the chemical. So it says harmful if swallowed, causes skin irritation, causes serious eye irritation and so on. So it's very important you know what kind of chemicals you're dealing with and any safety information of the chemicals before you use them.
Right, okay, so we understand the chemicals we're using. What if we actually do spill something? It says tell your teacher.
Yeah, you want to tell your teacher because your teacher will know how to clean up particular spills. There are certain chemicals that need to be cleaned up in a particular way. They can't just be wiped up. And that's your teacher's job to know how to clean them up. It's not your job to clean them up.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And if you get anything in your eyes, it says eye washer. Mr. Ward, tell us about the eye washer.
Follow me over to the eye washer, Mr. LeCornu.
Right.
So,
Let me just jump out of your way.
That's all right. Many labs will have an eye washer combined with a shower. If you get something in your eyes, it's your job to know what to do. What you do is, well, tell your teacher or get a friend to tell a teacher first. Then you need to open up your eyes, press the big yellow lever. It says push. Heaps of water comes up. Open up your eyes, dunk your eyes in there, and you leave them in there for 5 minutes or so.
Okay. And look, I think we've covered that, but whilst we're standing over here, I can't help but notice, I mean, there's a shower in the middle of the lab. What's going on? Does someone live in here, or what's the go?
Barry does live in here and he does shower every morning, but when Barry's not in here and you're in here, you need to know how to use the emergency shower. So if you get any chemicals all over you and it's just too big and all over the place, then you need to use the emergency shower. Take off any clothes you've got on, hop under the shower, pull the big yellow lever, and a ton of water will dump on you. And that will wash things away and you stay under there for about 10 minutes or so.
Right, so pretty much, Mr. Ward, this station here is for absolute emergencies.
Yeah, I haven't had to use one in my years of teaching.
I've never had to use one myself, but it's just about us knowing that it's there and how we can use it if we need to. All right, so chemical safety, we've been through everything. There's one last one, and I guess it's just super obvious. The last thing with chemical safety is to wash your hands. Mr. Ward?
So at the end of any lab when you're using chemicals, you want to wash your hands so you don't take anything with you. There'll be taps in the rooms, in the middle of the sinks. You might have specialty taps with soap. Use them before you leave.
Okay. And then after chemical safety, we're talking about using glassware. We use glassware all the time. Just before, when you were heating liquids, you were heating some test tubes here. Something that's interesting about glass is the fact that hot glass looks the same as cold glass.
Yeah, so if you've been heating for 5-10 minutes, the glass will be several hundred degrees, but it doesn't look like it's particularly hot. So you don't want to pick up anything that you've been heating. You just leave it to cool down for a long time before you get to it.
Okay, and like probably with this beaker here, if I'd been heating with that, I've left it on the bench top, but really I should have placed it on my heat-proof mat, or even better, left it on top of the tripod until it got to a point where it had cooled down.
Yeah, you don't want to put it directly on the table because then you'll burn the table.
Right. If you break anything, tell your teacher. Now, with these test tubes, I noticed they're in the test tube rack. That's really good practice because they're not going to roll around and potentially break. But Mr. Ward, what have you got over there?
So over here we've got a test tube just sitting on the bench. Anyone could knock it and break it.
Absolutely.
And, oops, there we go. We got a break.
Okay.
So what are you going to do,
If we
Mr.
break anything, tell your teacher. And then your teacher will go to the back of the room and find the broken glassware container. Your teacher is the trained professional who will be able to clean up your break. So Mr. Ward will safely dispose of that glass. The reason your teacher's going to do that and not you is because they are the qualified trained professional, and we don't want to risk you harming yourself. It's much simpler and easier for us to fill out the paperwork when Mr. Ward cuts himself compared to when you cut yourself. We want to keep you safe at all times.
Absolutely. So you don't clean up the broken glass, your teacher does.
Okay. So we've done fire, we've done chemicals, and we've looked at broken glassware. Our last list are the don'ts. So a couple of things about, what do you got there, Mr. Ward?
Just having a bit of fun.
Oh, right, okay. Don't enter the lab without a teacher.
So there could be equipment set up all over your lab, and if you come in without the teacher, you won't be supervised, and you could do something silly like Mr. LeCornu, and you could knock things off the table. You could damage the equipment, you could damage someone's work, but the main thing is you could hurt yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we don't enter the lab without the teacher.
No, the next one is you don't touch any equipment unless you're told to.
Really? Oh,
For that reason. So again, you could damage the equipment, you could hurt yourself. You wait for safety instructions, and then you do what you're supposed to do.
Sorry.
You follow
Okay.
your teacher's instructions.
Yep, my bad. Walk, don't run.
Right, so I'm walking around the room, I'm walking safely, my hands are fairly close in. I'm not going to knock anything off the table. If I'm running, I could be running like this, I could knock things all off the table. Again, damaging equipment or hurting myself, and we don't want that.
Okay, right. So there are our don'ts. Oh no, we do have one last one. Put your material back where you got it.
Yeah, so at the end of a prac, you might make a bit of a mess.
No way.
It's your job to clean up any mess that you make.
Okay, yeah. Put that back where you got it from, please, Mr. Ward. All right. So I guess we've covered a lot of things today, but it's really important that we have done so. The science lab is a really cool place. It's somewhere where we can do some fantastic experiments and we can learn some awesome things. But it's just so important that we do so in a safe manner and that we're always aware of our surroundings.
Yeah, I think we've done a good job. So how about a bit of a clap, Mr.
Yeah,
LaGuardia?
well done to us.
Ooh, there we go. How about that?
Nice. So that's been lab safety, guys. Thanks very much for watching. I hope it's helped you understand the lab.
Remember, a fun lab is a safe lab.
See you next time.
See ya.